In case you missed it, your host Kayla Blakesley is at it again. What did she say this time? Tune in to find out right now. From the Windows, Doors, and More studios, Windows, Doors, and More also refinishes hardwood floors so they look brand new again. Call 260-422-7077. American woman, listen what I say. Kayla Blakesley, Fort Wayne's Morning News, 92.3 FM and 1190 AM. Depend on it.
When does protecting your brand, your logo, your trademark become a little too aggressive? Well, right here in Fort Wayne, Smith & Wesson has filed a suit against the Fort Wayne Football Club, arguing its new logo is similar to the firearms company's famous, intertwined S&W initials. Meanwhile, just over in Ohio at the exact same time, Buc-ee's is making headlines after suing Beaver's Mini Mart in Beaver Creek, claiming its similar beaver logo is too close to the Buc-ee's mascot. And really, these two are just the latest in a really long list of trademark lawsuits all over the country right now. So to kind of help us break down the legal insights into all of this, we are turning to local attorney Kyle Golf, powered by Golf Legal Group. Good morning, Kyle.
Good morning, Kayla. I do need to remind the listeners this information is general only and should not be construed as legal advice.
Okay, I have so many questions here because both of these stories kind of popped almost simultaneously at the exact same time. But I guess for starters, what is the actual legal standard here? Is it simply whether they look alike, or is they're kind of this, checklist that the courts use?
Yeah, Kayla, that's a great point. And in this particular instance, and really generally with the Lanham Act, which controls trademark law, it's not about who copied whom or whether there's two logos that look alike at first glance. It's about whether the consumers are likely to be confused about the source, the sponsorship, or the affiliation of the goods or services. And so it isn't just a test of an eye test of, hey, these things look similar. It's really about the consumer and whether the consumer is likely to confuse the source. And there's a number of different factors, and each of the different federal districts or federal circuits are going to apply these factors slightly differently. But similarity of the mark is a factor, but there's a whole bunch of other ones, like similarity of the goods or services, how strong the senior mark is. So the senior mark is going to be in the Fort Wayne FC versus Smith & Wesson case. It's going to be Smith & Wesson. Their channels of trade, the sophistication of the purchasers, the evidence of actual confusion. That's going to be if Smith & Wesson has evidence, then that could be a factor that the courts consider, and also intent that does get factored into consideration on whether there's some sort of trademark infringement here.
So, okay, when it comes to this consumer confusion, right, that's kind of this term that we keep hearing, this phrase that we keep hearing. So does Smith & Wesson have to prove then, or have to have evidence that someone genuinely thought or thinks that the Fort Wayne Football Club is connected to Smith & Wesson, who sells firearms?
Yeah, that is a factor that the court can consider. Smith & Wesson could theoretically show that there is trademark infringement here without that particular factor. Like I said, there's a bunch of other factors that they could consider. They don't actually have to show actual confusion, but if they don't have many or any of the other factors that we discussed, then it's going to be a challenging case for them to make. And similarly, Fort Wayne FC has some arguments that they could make, and of course, as this case goes on, we can track and see if they do make these. But they could argue that the firearm industry and soccer are completely different industries, and so it's less likely that a consumer is going to confuse Smith & Wesson with Fort Wayne FC. And they could also argue that intertwined initials are fairly common design elements. So, for example, the New York Yankees have an intertwined logo, and many other sports teams do. There are some visual differences between these logos that I think those are all arguments that defendants commonly raise in trademark cases, and arguments that we could see Fort Wayne FC make in this particular case.
So, okay, then question, and let's just use again the Fort Wayne Football Club and Buc-ee's here as examples, or I mean this local market there in Ohio. Do these companies have to defend themselves then, or would, if they don't, does that really result in them losing their trademark or their logo?
Yeah, so it's a little bit different for these two cases because Smith & Wesson was established first over Fort Wayne FC versus Buc-ee's coming in much later versus the business is Beaver Mart in I think it's Beaver Creek, Ohio. So first to use does matter. But it is not the end-all, be-all in terms of who gets the actual trademark. Or registered trademark and who gets what rights. It is a factor, and the best example I can think of off the top of my head is that there is a second Burger King out there. I forget what state it's in, but it's only allowed to operate in its local market. It can't operate outside that market. And that actually brings up a really good point that plaintiffs, that larger companies often try to facilitate this, and in fact would have a business incentive to try to protect those marks. And really the Lanham Act, trademark law, is about both protecting businesses and protecting consumers. And what I mean by that is it's protecting the consumer from confusion while also protecting the goodwill businesses build up in their brands. And these two cases, Kayla, these are both pretty good illustrations of how difficult the balancing act can get. Because the corporate companies, they do have an incentive to try to protect their brands, because if they don't, then it could weaken the strength of their marks. If they don't enforce their marks, then it might be challenging for them to come back and say later, wait a minute, this company is doing this, and we don't like it. The second problem that could arise is that oftentimes plaintiffs are going to try to resolve these cases when the other side is smaller, because right now it may not look like Beaver Mart and Beaver Creek is much of a challenge to Buc-ee's, but if that brand expands and we have a regional or nationwide, there are two market brands that both have Smiling Beaver logos, even if they're not don't have similar design elements, it might create confusion down the road that doesn't exist now.
Yeah.
So it could be that there's some speculation going on by Buc-ee's to say, hey, we want to try to resolve this now so that we don't have a major issue going on down the road.
Right. Yeah, that does make sense to some degree. And I realize that you can't predict the outcome. I mean, but where do you think these cases are headed?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Kayla. I think that cases like these, oftentimes they do settle. My guess is that both of these cases may settle outside of court, and if they do, we may never know exactly what the settlement terms are. But it is very expensive to litigate trademark cases. There's a lot to it. There's surveys. There's experts that would need to be brought in. There's quite a bit of time and money that gets sunk into this, and that's why a lot of these cases do end up settling. And if I had to predict, I'd say the odds are that both of these cases settle outside of court.
Does that mean that they can still keep their logos? I mean, I'm thinking about the Fort Wayne Football Club specifically. Is that a possibility?
It could be, yeah. It could be a possibility, and I'm certain that a settlement without that sort of arrangement would be more difficult for Fort Wayne FC to agree to. Of course, this is speculation because I have no relation other than I took my family there last weekend. It was great. I highly recommend.
Well, I think that this one just fascinates people. I know that I'm fascinated, but really by both of these stories, because I think we all took a peek at these logos and we thought, wait, what, really? They're suing over that. So, Kyle, as both of these stories actually develop, we'll be sure to check in with you every Thursday here on the show.
Looking forward to it, Kayla.
That's local attorney Kyle Golf. He joins us every Thursday with his legal insights powered by Golf Legal Group right here on Fort Wayne's Morning News. Something really interesting. You can actually text the word legal right now to the word 45364 and ask our attorney anything. That's the word legal to 45364.
Hey, it's KB. As a show of appreciation for listening, use my promo code WOWO for deep discounts on all kinds of products at mypillow.com. That's promo code WOWO.
Podcasts by Federated Media.